Good evening. Hey, welcome to Fanaddicts of Film. Before we start here, we're just going to list our mission statement for the Fanaddicts of Film. Born analog, we become digital through the power of our own impulses and the constant need to be immersed in a great story. Welcome to our discussion. My name is Joe, and thank you for joining us. And along with me tonight is my lifelong friend, Ben Johnson. I'm going to pass it over to him real quick.
How's it going, everybody? Thanks so much for joining us. I wanted to just start off by talking about one of my favorite things in the world, the X-Files. We just barely saw this latest episode. Pretty amazing stuff. You know, still may not be as great as the old stuff, but anyway, I think it's super creative. Some of the most creative and amazing writing I've ever witnessed. And so we just saw this. What was it?
Plus one.
Plus one. That's right. Plus one. And so, essentially,
To season 11, episode 3.
It's essentially there. I mean, it's a game. It's a spoiler alert. It's a game of long distance hangman.
Psychic hangman.
Yeah. Psychic hangman, and they've got ways to basically bring in their doppelganger and their own doppelganger. So it's like super. I haven't heard anything like this before. I mean, it's not. I mean, a lot of this stuff is influenced by the Outer Limits and there's all these other shows that we've seen before. But
yeah.
Have you seen anything close like this before?
Well, the concept of the doppelganger. I mean, Dostoevsky wrote a book. I think it was published in like 1843 called Double, which is about a doppelganger, which was in the last few years there's been an adaptation of the film. Based on that book, directed by Richard A. from the IT Crowd, and starring Jesse Eisenberg. So I am familiar, plus there's the old Roger Moore film, The Man Who Haunted Himself, which is again about the doppelganger. So the concept isn't new. I mean, Twin Peaks uses the doppelganger as well, but this is a unique way of telling it, where essentially, again, spoilers, if you haven't seen episode 3 of the new season of the X-Files, don't go any further or proceed at your own risk, because I'm going to spoil the shit out of this for you. You got two brothers, a brother and a sister, who both have a psychic link, and they play a childish gang of hangman, and the name that they pull up for this hangman, with each letter, that person that they're writing the name of will see a doppelganger of themselves until the name is fully spelled out, in which case the doppelganger will make full manifest and will kill you. Not always by hanging. It's another good entry in the X-Files canon. It's not a great episode, but there's really good ideas, really good characters, some of that trademark dark X-Files humor, mixed with really creative storytelling.
What do we say about this character? They was a cross between like Steve Buscemi and
Little Steve Buscemi and Paul Rubens.
No letter C, super freak.
A lot of fun stuff in this episode. And actually some really good jarring moments, didn't you think, with the doppelgangers, the way that they would appear?
I was blown away. Like, for instance, let's bring up an image here. Like this was priceless. I mean, just being able to see Scully, like, and especially just seeing them both on this like complete opposite end of everything. Like I was blown away by it. I thought this whole concept was great, and it did for me.
And that's why I love the X-Files, man. It's like a weird combination of Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Kolchak the Night Stalker, The Invaders, The Fugitive, The Prisoner. You know, all these great pop cultural things that Chris Carter and his writing staff, a lot of notable writers in there, have come up with over the years. They've managed to create a lot of memorable characters and episodes, and I like the show a lot. It's one of my favorites growing up. It's one of my favorites from the 90s. I've been a fan right through the beginning. I will say, though, that sometimes the link, the arc that has been running through the whole colonization of Earth by the aliens and the black goo and the shapeshifters, and some of that got a little convoluted for me throughout the run, and so currently is the relationship between Mulder and Scully. I don't know, when did they were together, they're not together, it's so up in the air, but I still love it.
I loved it. I've always loved it, and I love the black goo. and it's something that just terrified the living crap out of me because I had nightmares about it as a kid. But I freaking loved it. One of my favorite arcs in the entire series is of course Krychek and everything.
Yeah.
And hope anyone who likes this, please like and subscribe if you feel like it, because we're gonna be hopefully doing some more X-Files shows and talking more about them, because if it's one thing Joe and I really love, it's the X-Files. We really do love it.
It's not just the X-Files, but the whole like X-Files universe. So like the 11 seasons plus the 2 movies plus the sister series Millennium plus the spinoff The Lone Gunman. Topics which we'll get to later on down the road, not tonight, but later on we're gonna definitely, as this series progresses, talk more about the X-Files.
This is a great this is a great moment when she's just up at this
in the insane asylum, the sister getting crazy,
and it's like, and no matter what, those two will not go into the room with her. With poor Scully.
The nurses.
My favorite part of this scene, like, it's been proven you can't cut off your own head, right? So Scully the skeptic says that still.
Well, and there she's holding Mulder's card that he had given to this guy before his doppelganger killed him, and just typical Mulder, like insensitive prick that he can be. Sitting there going, well, he could have called you. Well, maybe he tried, Scully, but he lost his head, and just snickers and walks away. And I love it. I love the kid. Sometimes I feel like they're so used to the characters that they're not even necessarily trying anymore. They just are the characters.
Yeah.
So did you want to talk about some of our favorite past episodes too?
Before we do that, I just wanted to, like, there's a couple of moments that were just pretty funny, like just. And quintessential Mulder stuff that he says in there, especially when they were trying to. Like when they're first
cuddling.
When they were first, that too was cool. But when they were first investigating, I don't think we have images on this, but when they were first investigating this whole thing, he said, they were like, Scully was like, oh, so do you believe in Mulder? And he's like, no, I just think he's too stupid to make it up.
It's like, I do want to point out, those are some beautiful sideburns. It's almost like he doesn't have sideburns. He just grew the hair long, because they just take a life on their own.
They just keep going.
I mean, you look at the guy and you think, keep my children away from this man, which was great. A couple of trademark X-Files oddballs.
And these two, the whole time they're playing this game of Hangman, and they're just like, oh, what really, letter L?
Is there an L in there? And the cool thing is that like through the entire run, they don't actually have any scenes together. They're communicating psychically. Yeah. She's in an asylum, and he works at the asylum as like an orderly, but they don't actually have any scenes together. So she'll be saying something out loud. It'll cut to him responding to her, and it's just I think in the canon of quirky characters of the X-Files, even though I don't think it's one of the most memorable episodes of the X-Files, I think those two characters and the concept are definitely unique, and I think those two oddball characters are going to be remembered along with some of the great oddball characters of the show, which we will discuss momentarily.
And at the beginning, doesn't this woman, she's like throwing poo at Scully at the very beginning?
They say it's well, that's in the middle of it. They say it's dookie, but it's actually like pudding.
Right, but it's actually pudding.
Because at first when I saw the dookie flying, I thought they did it, and then it turned out to be just pudding. But still.
But they even had some really interesting moments with like Mulder over her bed. Do you remember the creepy moments of like
how she keeps waking up
and Mulder's standing there the whole time, and this of course isn't it, but there's some bizarre moments in that.
I just want to point out.
You think?
Look at how attractive she's like a fine wine. Gillian Anderson just gets better looking with age. She's one of a handful of actors out there that are at a certain age, and I think she's just sexier now than she was in her 20s. I don't know why.
She's beautiful,
and I don't even think it's because I'm getting older. I think even if I was still 18 years old when and watching this for the first time, I would still think she's more attractive. And she's tiny. She's small. Very petite. I've met her. Briefly.
Yes, briefly.
Briefly. It's long enough to stand next to her and get a photo where I look like a fanboy geeking out and she looks like she's bored shitless because she's had to endure 3,000 sweaty fanboys geeking out. because she's super desirable and she knows it.
Okay, I just wanted really quickly make sure we had everything here, and that there are all these really great scenes. And
that was one of the scenes.
This one right here.
Oh yeah,
and this one's really great. It's really kind of a crappy image. Sorry, everybody. But anyway, it was actually, I was blown away at what a cool episode it was. It did kind of finish really quickly.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to say about this episode before we move on, or?
Abrupt ending, but overall,
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to rate the episode, if we were rating individual episodes for a television show, it would be like a film for me. I go 4 stars. I would give this one 2.5, only because the resolution was a little weak and felt kind of hastily. It's kind of felt like like they had written a really long episode, and then kind of in the editing process went, shit, we're going way past the 42-minute mark. Believe it or not, when this show started back in September of 1993, the average episode was still about 46 to 48 minutes per episode. But now we have so many commercials, which I'm not complaining. That's what pays for the program. But in 42 minutes, didn't it kind of feel like they had to quickly end it? Like there was a quick resolution?
Definitely. It was so bizarre. It was just like all of a sudden they were in the hotel again. Like they had skipped all the other things. Like literally, like the scene before that was Mulder fighting his doppelganger, which was badass, by the way.
Yeah, especially because you didn't know which one was the doppelganger,
which is always classic and true. But honestly, like I was floored by that. Just seeing Mulder fight himself. Anyway. That was great.
I'd also like to kind of point out the juxtaposition between how Mulder and Scully, and that's kind of one of the underlying themes of the episode, I think, was still pointing out the fact that after all the shit that Scully has seen, she's still uber skeptical about anything being supernatural or even the concept of evil, while showing that she still has some of her Catholic beliefs in her. And that, even in the end, she's still willing to concede to some kind of good luck charm, as you will, to sort of just on the off chance that shit's real. Whereas Mulder obviously goes into it with more of an open mind. But I think that the way that they dealt with their doppelgangers was really interesting and reflective of their characters too, and why their characters work so well together. He straight up attacks his doppelganger, and in the fight you lose sight of which one is which. And I'll be honest, I thought that when Mulder pulled the shelf on top of the other Mulder, that it was the real Mulder that had done that, and then you find out, no, it's the doppelganger. Where Scully sees her doppelganger in the car, we'd seen that photograph earlier, and she simply says, "You're not real, I'm going to dismiss you," and she just kind of disappears.
Yeah.
And I thought, that just sums up their characters perfectly. Perfectly.
It was great. And it's like you always saying, even after these many years that we've seen him, there's still Scully's still the skeptic and Mulder is still But it was a really unique episode, and that's what's so beautiful about the X-Files, is that each and every episode, however many different monsters or whatever that they hit, they're extremely unique and so creative.
Even if the episodes themselves, even if all 200 episodes are not memorable episodes, when you have a long-running show like that, it's hard to make not every episode of Doctor Who or The Simpsons or Star Trek are going to be knocking them out of the park and memorable, but that's not to say that in their own way they aren't all unique and enjoyable. Even episodes where you come away kind of feeling like, well, that wasn't the greatest X-Files, that's the whole point. Might not be the greatest X-Files episode, but it's still better than most other television shows.
I remember one of my favorite parts of this episode was when our Steve Buscemi and Paul Rubens character was like,
Chucky? His name's Chucky.
Yeah, well, he's like, I'm not a magician, I'm an FBI agent. He's like, I got tons of body parts in the fridge.
Mulder doesn't even.
Just doesn't that guy.
I expected Mulder to actually open up the refrigerator to see if there are any body parts in there, because you really don't want to say that to an FBI agent.
It's like, what the.
So now I guess we're going to talk about some of our favorite episodes of the past, and I kind of wish that the concept of podcasting and the internet as we know it existed back when I was 18 and 19 when the show first started, so that we could kind of go through every season and every episode and give them their own ratings, because there's so many good ones. And this one, beer. This one that you're seeing is a clip from one of my favorite episodes, and I'm trying to think of what season it is. I think it's the third season.
3? I think you said it was season 3.
Season 3. It's called Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, with the late, great Peter Boyle there. You may know him from Taxi Driver, Young Frankenstein, Everybody Loves Raymond. Like, great actor. He passed away a few years ago, which is a great loss. But this episode, very, very humorous and sad episode at the same time, which is why it sticks out to me. Because first of all, watching it, and if you go back and you watch older episodes of The X-Files, you'll be surprised at how many guest stars were then up-and-comers. Jack Black, Giovanni Ribisi. And you would go, oh my God, I can't believe, Bruce Campbell's in an episode. Lots of people. But this, at the time, I think was the biggest actor that they'd had as a guest star on the show. And it was not like a big to-do that Peter Boyle, who really hadn't done television in years, was mainly a film actor at the time, was doing this episode that was still kind of fledgling. So you have to keep in mind that all those years ago, the first 2 seasons of The X-Files, it almost got dropped after its first season, barely made it through its second season without getting dropped.
I hadn't realized that.
It was the third season that it started to become the cultural phenomenon where it got so big where they were able to do the movie, and the first movie, Fight the Future, and where the catchphrases, I want to believe and the truth is out there, became like national catchphrases during the 90s. This was, I think, one of the episodes that was instrumental in securing that audience. It got such rave reviews, I think, from virtually every publication that reviewed it, from TV Guide to Entertainment Weekly, all gave it great. I mean, truly one of the best written episodes. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so I've forgotten all the details. But if you happen to have access to these older episodes, this is a standout for me. One of my standouts. But now Ben's going to talk about one of his standout episodes.
I love that one. I do love the early seasons of the X-Files so much, because there's this huge development in this.
Ironically, that photo's from one of the later episodes.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it's totally. Yeah, sorry, that came out. Again, but that's just, once again the same one.
I mean, look at that sadness and apathy.
He's a great actor. I love
Peter Boyle's character. That's right. Real quick, going back to that episode, just so you have a little bit of context, Clyde Bruckman is like a psychic who hates being a psychic. He hates that he sees these things because he sees his own death coming. And
doesn't he see everybody's death, or just
well, yes, okay, yes, he does kind of mention, if I recall, because again, it's been a while since I've seen this episode. I think the last time I rewatched it was in 2010 when I first signed on to the Netflix streaming service. Before then, I was old school because I'm old, and I would get the DVDs of things sent to my house, and then somebody said, dude, you can stream from your console, and I said, did you hear that? That was my mind being blown right now. So I rewatched it, but it's been a long time. But I just remember it's an episode that makes you laugh because it's not a comedy. It's not one of their humorous episodes like they have done. I mean, I think the villains in Plus One were more comedic than the villain in this. It's just the irony of the particular episode and the depth of Peter Boyle's character. Clyde Bruckman, that just makes it just one. Even if you don't like the X-Files, just watch this episode, and I think you'll enjoy it. It stands alone.
Honestly, like, and one of the things that, or if you're like a 20-something and never seen the X-Files before ever, and you just love awesome, like, brand new creative sci-fi, it all holds up now. Like, you could any of the old. I mean, my personal opinion, of course, it is something that I didn't actually. The reason why I say that specifically is because I wasn't into it right away. I was busy doing everything. I was actually in college at the time, or at least
we were
going.
Well,
we were when it was finishing, and then like when it started to get really popular. My family was actually watching it. I was like going to school, and I was way too busy to watch it. And then I had watched it later, and it's like every time I had ever seen this anyway. Every time I had ever seen the episodes, I was just walking in and out. I was seeing moments, and that. You know, I call it.
No, they've aged well. I mean, some of the visual effects may be dated, but they've aged well.
But the point is that like I didn't get into it until later, and then several years after, it was something so amazing, and then I was blown away at the creativity involved here. Yeah. This episode is my favorite of my favorite all-time episode because, well, for many reasons.
What is the name of this episode too? I always forget, but it is an amazing episode.
I actually don't even remember the name of the episode. But anyway. Spoiler alert. They're actually end up. There's 2 timelines happening at the same time, and they're actually on some. I think they're on a Nazi warship.
It's a boat.
But is it a Nazi? Or no? Excuse me. It's a warship that gets invaded by Nazis.
It's a luxury liner that gets invaded by Nazis. Right. Mulder is stuck in a time loop. He's in the past.
But are they in the Bermuda Triangle or something? I can't remember.
I believe so.
It's such a brilliant episode, and it's like every character that's normally on the show ends up in there, as you can see. You know, the smoking man's in there and everything.
I'm just gonna say, there's counterparts to everybody within that time zone. I think, with the exception of Mulder, right? Because he doesn't ever run into himself. And again, I forget the details of this one too. And I actually watched this more recently than the Clyde Bruckman episode. But I just want to say this before I send it back over to Ben, is that one of the reasons why this episode does stand out is because I think for the first time in the show's run, this one felt really cinematic.
Yeah, it really did. It really did.
It could have been a film.
The way the camera moved, I remember specifically the way the camera moved with the. I mean, I feel like they were on a real ship.
Split screen. Oh yeah, they were on a real ship.
So yeah, let's continue. So that's we'll kind of come back to
there
that.
There you go. Like
stuff like this.
Screen
this was amazing. Yeah, sorry about the resolution, everybody. I know this is like
best picture we could find online. Don't blame us.
Sorry. Anyway, we'll get better images when we do more X-Files episodes. So please, if you do like this, please like and subscribe. I know that everybody says like, subscribe, and all that crap, but
comment, subscribe. Let's get a dialogue.
But honestly, if just check out some of these episodes if you've never seen the X-Files before. It is best. It's my favorite one of my favorite shows of all time, really. This is just fantastic. There was a lot of the split screen going on. Did they have a vertical and horizontal going on,
no.
or is it just the?
Okay. Yeah, no, I think
I could have.
No.
I don't.
You know what, Ben? We're going to have to rewatch.
We're gonna have to. Yeah, we're gonna have to pull one more. A couple more of these. So there's two versions of themselves. Anyway, we'll do a whole review on this episode next time, but because it's been so long since
they are in the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah,
that's what it. Okay.
And by the way, if any of you Phillies, X-Files, whatever the Dreamers, whatever you call it.
It's X-Fanaddicts.
Is it?
Yes.
I'm just going to say X-Files fans because that's what I am. If any of you diehards out there are watching this kind of rolling your eyes and going, these guys, well, your memories are shit. Keep in mind, it's been a long time. I saw this when it originally aired. Please, by all means, refresh, don't be harsh, but refresh if you feel the need to clarify. Because we obviously can't give you all the correct details at this moment. By all means, post the name of the episode, give us any information, but it is definitely one that is one of the best episodes, and this is out of 11 seasons now. This is another one of the best episodes that they've ever done. Super creative. And we're going to move on to another favorite. Which one was that?
Damn it, dude. We're flying. We're just kind of making stuff.
Home. That's a later episode. That's the one about the inbred family. That
you were wanting to talk about this one.
Yeah, Jose Chung's From Outer Space with the great late Charles Nelson Riley. Actually, I don't.
Was this a stop motion?
I don't even know if he's gone, or if I think Charles Nelson Riley's gone. This moment, this is kind of, it's like a dude in a rubber suit. So basically, the setup of this episode is there's a writer played by Charles Nelson Riley. If you don't remember Charles Nelson Riley, he was a staple of like 60s and 70s comedies, especially the shows of Sid and Marty Krofft, Lidsville. He was on the Ghost and Mrs. Muir television series. Very effeminate, funny guy. Always kind of did that kind of a thing, Like I love the guy, and kind of like a Rip Taylor, but without all the confetti. But he plays a writer who, gosh, I'm going to have to rewatch this episode because there's so much detail in it. I remember specifically that, I've probably seen it half a dozen times, but it's been a long time. But I remember that it has certain points of view. He's telling this story, and so it presents from his point of view Mulder and Scully in it's the first outright comedic episode of the X-Files that's really just going for comedy. It doesn't go for any serious heady drama or any mind-altering episodes. It's mostly just comedy. And I remember that one of the best things about it is it has Men in Black before the Malibu comic, which became the movies, and before that concept of Men in Black became so popular. And I was aware of that concept. They were not fighting extraterrestrials. They were like, The Men in Black were basically, extraterrestrials were coming after you to erase your mind, kind of a thing. Jesse Ventura and Alex Trebek play Men in Black in this episode, which is one of the funniest things in the whole. You're like, that's Jesse Ventura and Alex Trebek. Fantastic episode. I think we have other images of it in here.
Let me. I'm not sure that we pulled very many. I'm sorry.
No, I think we need to go the other way.
We'll have to do a whole other review on. That's all the only other one we've got. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's right. No, but yeah, Clyde brought or Jose Chunks from Outer Space.
So good.
Such a good episode that. And it was so popular and so well received. And again, I think it's a third season episode as well. I think the third season is really, that's where the show hit its stride. Not that the first two seasons aren't great, because Ice, that's another one we forgot to pick. You remember that in the first season? Ice. It's kind of like John Carpenter's The Thing or John Campbell's or Joseph Campbell's Who Goes There.
Yeah, it's a remake
in Antarctica and We Are Not Who We Are. That's
a wonderful episode. Wonderful episode.
Jose Chung was such a popular character that Charles Nelson Riley reprised him in the sister series Millennium with the great Lance Henriksen as Frank Black, the FBI profiler, is kind of psychic, and it's more darker supernatural series with its own weird conspiracies. But Jose Chung pops up on that series, and again, it's a humorous episode. So if you're rewatching these are episodes that should stand out, whether or not we give you the correct information or what's going on in our brains, how we remember it. Either way, these episodes are episodes that should stand out to you.
So anyway, we want to say that we're going to be pulling out some more X-Files episodes because we just love it, and that's something that we love to talk about. But we just wanted to talk quickly about a couple of the Black Mirror episodes, and then we'll be
from the new series. Is that that's fine.
Just from season 4, because it's just like some stuff that's happening right. I've only, and sorry, we don't have any other images. Sorry, everybody. Instead, I shall act each individual moment of the show out and sing it at the same time.
You're in for a long night.
Yeah. No. So this first one that everybody, at least people I know that are raving about this Star Trek
one.
I thought it was actually really interesting. For instance, because we've got two people from Breaking Bad in this episode. Particularly, that's something that, of course, it turned out you got your Aaron Paul gamer at the end. But
spoiler.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, buddy. So yeah, I mean, honestly, if I'm so sorry. That was awful.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
People should know by
Hopefully.
now. We're here to talk about shit. If you haven't seen it yet, you need to watch something else.
Anyway, I mean, I've been personally moved by these few last episodes of the Star Trek, and I can't remember the name of that one.
The USS the McAllister.
But you said specifically that you didn't like it because, and you pointed out some really interesting parts to that, because I know what you mean. Like, the thing that stood out for me is more specifically in that episode, you feel something really. The guy who you feel sorry for him, and then he becomes the villain. He becomes literally the worst thing in this entire universe of cloned digital people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that that's what essentially what they are? And so it becomes this bizarre twist on things. And but you had a different.
I was just. I guess I'm tired of people using Star Trek as an analogy.
Forgive me.
I'm just, and I get
it. It reminded me of Star Trek, but
I mean that was the whole goal.
Yeah.
But I felt like, okay, so this is the anti-Galaxy Quest.
Right. Or okay, yeah.
You know what I mean?
More accurate, yeah.
But I guess what I have a problem, because Black Mirror, and I've been watching the show since before Netflix had it, when it was exclusively a British program on Channel 4 in Britain or England. I don't know the extent of how Channel 4 spreads in that country, but because I'm an American and I only know dumb American things. That's not true. But anyways, so I guess what I had a problem with is because Black Mirror has always been hit or miss for me, which is why I liked it when it was only like 3 episodes a season, because it was a lot easier to swallow. I kind of get tired of dark storylines that have to have the twist in the end, because then that becomes the predictability, is that, it's going to have a twist. I guess my problem with it is that I get what it's a satire about Uber fandom, and it's a satire about escapism, but I guess I had a problem with it because there's really no one that you kind of root for in the sense of the characters that you do root for are the artificial characters. The central character played by how did they describe? Was it they described him on Breaking Bad as the dead-eyed Opie? Yeah, that guy. From Fargo season 2. I can never remember his name. He looks like Matt Damon's like younger brother. I always forget his name, so apologies. But he's a sympathetic character in the real world.
Is it Jesse Plemons?
I think so. He becomes an unsympathetic character in the virtual world, and he's so mean that I kind of felt like there's what is the moral of the story in that sense that I really didn't. Yes, I rooted for the virtual characters to kick his ass out of the game because he's such a prick, but at the same time, like, it's because he's picked on, and I don't know, that whole concept is just tired.
Well, it's part of. I really wanted him to change, and I guess that's the difference between.
It's Black Mirror, so you knew it wasn't going to happen.
That's the difference between it's like you and I, whatever. I wanted him to change and somehow learn something and become. And now that you mention those things, it does make me realize that I wanted to see him kind of grow or change or something. And especially when they have what's her name come and pull all the DNA out of his apartment.
Yeah.
But for no reason. No reason. Do you remember that?
Well, it was.
It ended up being for no reason because he's caught in the game anyway.
Right, but wasn't that the reason?
Well, they had to pull the DNA so that he couldn't control them.
That's right.
The reason why he had the DNA in the first place was so that he could basically recreate them as digital clones from their DNA, and so they could feel something, which is crazy. But he was able to recreate them by having their DNA in his fridge. Yeah. And so they had her come and steal the DNA, but it ended up being for no reason. Do you remember? Anyway,
no, I agree because in the virtual world he ends up doing so many terrible things, and you think, well, he's such a prick, but at the same time, isn't that kind of what we do with a lot of video games? Like especially Rockstar games, right? Like your Grand Theft Autos and your Red Dead Redemptions. We live out our violent fantasies and tendencies, and we shoot police officers and cowpoke and all that kind of stuff. But I guess they did try and pull the wolf, the rug out from underneath you. I can't talk right now. Like, there's the scene where before they escape, the crew, and I'm sorry if you haven't seen this, it's going to be really confusing. If you have seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about. Where they escape his specific program into the cloud so that so everything defaults so it doesn't look like Space Fleet, the fictional Star Trek show.
Right.
Before they do that, the guy whose kid he had flushed out of the airlock, who is his like partner in the real world at the business, and he's telling him, I should have maybe said this to you, and I should have treated you better. And you're starting to think, okay, he's coming around, but then they do a typical Black Mirror thing, and no, it's all just and you're gonna die, and nobody learns any lesson, and then it ends up with a voice-only cameo by Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad,
which was fun.
Which was funny, but it also proved that like everywhere they go, they're just gonna find asshole gamers who would do the same things to them. So I don't understand how this has become like the second most popular of episode of Black Mirror ever, because it just seemed so trite to me. I don't know.
It was bizarre in the sense. It was bizarre in the sense that specifically, like, you have Star Trek. That's what we're all led to believe. So many of us believe that we're in a Star Trekian universe. Yeah. Star Trek is just something that's so deep, but yet you got like a very shallow message out of it, which is crazy. So it's really bizarre how that is, and so they're in this digital space where they say, oh, we can go anywhere. I remember them specifically saying that. They're like, we can go anywhere we want in this digital realm or whatever, wherever they are, which is great. But like you were saying, they have just so they're going to be dodging anyway. But it could turn into an entire that in and of itself could turn into its own television series. It could have. But
it would have been. I would say if it was a pilot, you would have really had to condense that story down to it would have had to have been a double length, because then you would have to forget the characters that were the bad guy who was the asshole captain that they had to defeat in order to do that. But he hasn't seen all of the latest series. I still have I think one episode left. So I'm going to say that later on in the series, without really getting into it, there is one episode that stands out, and you'll know which one it is. It looks and feels like nothing else Black Mirror has ever done before, and I think it really does stand out. But you wanted to talk about episode 2, Crocodile.
I mean, once again, spoilers, everybody. So, this whole craziness that you're put on. I mean, once again, like we were just saying before earlier. I mean, we don't necessarily need to get so into this one, but I mean, because it is so messed up in what ends up happening there. But like, I just remember like we were talking about specifically, like how this whole show, this whole Black Mirror in general, is just our fear of what will or may happen from technological advances
or modern technology.
Yeah, modern technology and what it will
Which
do.
is why it'll instantly date itself. In 5 years' time, most of these episodes will seem like, oh my god, it's like VR 5, or VR Troopers in the 90s. Yeah.
Well, but
you liked Crocodile much more than I
mean, it was just so weird how it became like, but they hit the biker. She goes through this whole, thing of where she's trying to figure out whether she's going to.
Yeah, what's the setup on this episode?
So they hit the bike. They hit the person on the bike.
The mom.
This couple.
Yeah.
After out partying.
Yeah.
And so they hit someone on the road, and they actually accidentally kill him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so she just ends up. I mean, we all know this. Hopefully, you've seen the episode. If you're at all watching this, please don't watch any further if you have not seen this. Honestly, it's a great. It's actually I just really loved it. But it was so bizarre how she just it's like you're really rooting for her. She's the one who says she doesn't want to be hiding the body. We gotta call the police. We gotta do this. We gotta do this. All these things. And by the end of this, this episode, it's like what 6 years later or something like that. She's got a kid and everything, and ends up. But the thing they were able to pull the memories from the guinea pig, I guess.
Yeah, I can't honestly. Anyway, it was not as memorable for me. I was probably half watching it because that's sometimes how anthology shows work for me. And he hasn't seen any of Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams yet on Amazon Prime, so when he does, we will discuss that because there's a lot of comparisons between the two. I think it's a better series. But Philip K. Dick, what can I say? Philip K. Dick.
I'm gonna make note of that one.
But, like I said, Black Mirror is always hit or miss for me. And maybe it's because it's also so rooted in our modern fears or our modern technology, reality shows, dating apps, apps in general, virtual reality. I mean, most of them are, and very few of them actually have kind of nice, soft, happy endings. It's always got to be kind of like this bleak undertone. Like, I get it. Life can be shit. We all know that. But sometimes it's okay to have a happy ending. And when they do that on Black Mirror, it is kind of a relief. And those episodes, which I think they've done like twice, in fact, they're very similar episodes from like seasons 3 and 4, tend to appeal more to me. Maybe that's also, too, because it's more Twilight Zone-y in that sense. See, Twilight Zone, a lot of people confuse. Twilight Zone is more fantasy and supernatural than science fiction. Outer Limits is all science fiction.
Right.
These shows, Electric Dreams and Black Mirror, they have more in common with the Outer Limits. But when they do have those nice endings where it's something good has happened, sometimes it's a lot more reassuring because we get so bombarded with such downbeat entertainment, such downbeat news all the time. I mean, you only have to watch your local news to see how downbeat, or pay attention to current politics to see how downbeat the world is becoming. I mean, even in the X-Files, the latest episode we were talking about earlier, +1, both Scully and Mulder mentioned that the world is going to hell. Yeah. And that the president's trying to take the FBI down with him.
And that's something that I was just going to bring up on that also, is that they had the interesting commentary about that, about the president bringing on the FBI and everything. They're always...
Well, he did fire Comey. It's art imitates life. Life imitates art. Yeah. Look at this. Also, I just kind of want to do this. Camera 2. Camera 1. Camera 2. So, camera 1. Oh, wait, no, it's back on me. Come on. It's not... What? Well, I guess
anyway.
We'll wrap this up real quick. It's stuck on me. I'm so sorry you got to look at this mug. But we'll just wrap this up real quick.
It's okay now. It's okay now.
No, there you go.
We're okay now. We're okay now. All right. So, hey, thanks for indulging us, and thanks for hanging out with us. I appreciate you so much, guys. And just honestly, If you like the X-Files, we're going to be doing more of that. Again, my name is Ben, and I'm at Bonjaban on Twitter, and this is my friend Joseph.
I'm Joe, and I am not on Twitter. I don't tweet. Nothing against people who do. But yes, please tell all your friends about us. Where we're going to grow and have more content for you here within the year, and we're hoping that we'll become your favorite YouTube geeky film podcast. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks again, and have an awesome day.